how to draw hands with a butterfly. The reference image is in the link below. To start out with, of course, I'm going to use more of a simple flesh tone color, but you also want to mix it between different pink tones. Now, if you can see too that there's a little bit of some red in there, so I'm using a little bit of a burnt sienna, as well as some blues and more of the highlighted areas. So use a variety of darker flesh tones as well as lighter ones, a little bit of pink and some blues just to have a nice contrast, because the contrast between the warm tones and the cool tones is super important. Now you can see I'm also using a paintbrush. I'm actually using Gamsol Mineral Spirits Oil. It is, you can look it up on Amazon, but it's also in my materials list ebook, which is linked below in the description. But to start out with a thumb here, I'm working on the creases. The creases are darker, and you also want to have more of the shading in the low lighted areas where the crease begins. Make sure that you're also kind of implementing some of those lines where on the hand, if you look at your hand itself, there's so many different lines that are happening. So definitely want to emphasize on that. And then make sure that you have it all nice and blended. And you also want to make sure that the paper is going to be able to hold a lot of layers, because with hands, for me at least, I had to apply a lot of layers for the hands to look more accurate. But I definitely blended a lot of this together, and then I went back over and kind of fixed some of it up. But to lighten up some of these areas that are a little bit too dark, you can use a white pencil or just a very pale pink as well. And then the portions on the hands too, each section of the hand kind of looked a little bit like different colors. So you can see that the palm has a little bit of a different color than the thumb there, but I did want to make it look more consistent. So I did go back over that and put a little bit more browns and a little bit of grays in there as well. And then when it comes to the fingers, I worked one by one, and I used a little bit of some green tones too. That way I can kind of implement more of that natural green tone that's reflected in the environment. And then for the darker parts where it's shaded between the, the separation between each finger, I used a dark sepia. Oh, and I also added some purple in there as well. So you can see that I used a little bit of that lighter purple gray color. So really mixing a variety of colors is super important. And to get the skin tone, it was pretty difficult to get a more natural looking skin tone. But because of the lighting too, this had more of that golden hour lighting on it. So the hand definitely looked a little bit more different. It had a lot more warm tones to it than I anticipated. But definitely use that mineral spirits to help blend everything together, because it really helped me in the long run make everything look more smooth without having to apply as many layers and damaging the paper. Now, if you're curious what kind of paper I use Bristol vellum paper, and you can actually get that material, a link to that material in the ebook as well, which is linked below. And then for the fingers, I used kind of a lot of gray in there along with some more red tones. And it just kind of ended up turning out to be, very reddish looking, but I did go back over it with more brown. So this was definitely a learning curve for me, because this was my first time actually drawing hands. So it took me a very long time to accomplish this. But this was done in an 8x10 size. It was definitely bigger too, so it took even longer than I anticipated. But the colors that I used essentially were pinks, purples, browns, grays, a little bit of peach tone. And then for the child's hand, it was similar colors but done a little bit differently. So I tried to make it really smooth, because the adult hand has more wrinkles to it than the child's hand. So this one, it was more plump, more smooth, had a little bit more of a a cooler tone to it, had more purple in there. So I really wanted to emphasize that. And then the top of the hand had a lot more highlights going on. So I kind of just ended up blocking that out and not applying too much layer to the top there. Just kind of worked with the skin tone color itself. Now, when it comes to the nail, that's pretty much the only nail that I really had to draw as far as from what I remember. And It really wasn't too hard. You just want to pretty much do the same thing where you're just drawing a little bit of a darker line to emphasize, but not at the very top, because it's not as dark at the very top of the nail there. And then trying to get it all together nice and smooth and whatnot. You could see that the inside is a little bit darker, so you definitely want to emphasize that as you're going through. And then just working using the Gamsol mineral oil to get it really well blended. And you want to wait for the first couple of layers before you apply it. It really does help if you just have a few layers before going through that. So I do have to draw another nail, but this one wasn't as dark as the other nail. So just pay attention to what is darker and what is lighter. And really just don't be afraid to play around with the colors. This was my first attempt at drawing hands, and I get a lot of compliments on this portrait. So I know at least I did something right, even though maybe the colors weren't quite accurate, at least in my viewpoint. They're not as accurate as I would like them to be, but it was still a nice, fun challenge to do. So working on just making sure that the skin is nice and smooth for children's hands, and then more adult hands have a little bit more wrinkles, a little bit more, more lines than the children's hands. So just pay attention to those kind of details. Now we can finish off this last finger. So it kind of goes a little bit further up behind the butterfly. And now we can work on the butterfly. So this is more of an orange tone butterfly. And I actually just applied more of the orange first and then went with the black. Started to kind of blend it all together and then use that mineral spirits to darken it up and make it look more smooth. I really love using that stuff because it does make it look more smooth without having to apply so many layers and ruining the paper overall. And you can see that the outer part of the butterfly has a lighter orange than the inner part, so emphasizing that too, just focusing on what's lighter, what's darker, and getting that nice blend between the two. It's really important to lighting is everything. Lighting is key to getting your portrait to look more realistic. And the center part really wasn't too hard. You just kind of follow the lines and focus on the colors. I know it's super fast, but if you have any questions, please feel free to comment down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.